What's up, sexy people? It is Dave. It's Duncan back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. And for this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new release from Oslo noisemakers, Hammok.
I knew it was Scandinavian. I could hear it.
Yes.
Hear it. Ripping it.
Could feel it in my plums. The band's new album. You alright?
That's the good stuff I'm on tonight.
Oh, sorry.
And see, when you like take a mouthful of that, the last thing you want to be thinking about is a set of fucking hairy plums.
Or spitting it out.
You know, when you never. No, I would have. If that had come out my mouth, I would have licked off the floor. I don't know the last time I put this floor.
The band's new album, wait for it, Look How Long Lasting Everything Is Moving Forward at Once,
Yep.
were released on March 1st via 30-something records.
That's us, a couple of 30-somethings, Dave.
That's us. A couple of sexy 30s. Plus 10. So, formed in 2020 during the pandemic.
2020?
I know. Whippersnappers. This Norwegian trio worked on their upcoming debut album in the middle of the summer in 2023. Vocalist and guitarist Tobias Maxwell Osland says the following about the record process of the album. Zero respite, zero calm. The album is a collection of songs that convince you on all fronts all the time. If I think back to when we made the record, the only thing I remember is being in the band room with all the volume on full blast, the amps beeping and squeaking as soon as I didn't touch the strings and everything was pushed to the max. Everything is homemade. No one but us has touched the music before mixing and mastering. Every little thing is extremely consistent and the sound is uncompromising. This is the least filtered product we have ever made. The record has extremely little patience for nuance and interpretation. Fuck you and fucking die. Hypocrite fucking die. Long lasting, forever lasting. Throw lots of paint on a wall and eventually it forms a picture. So
I was down with this press statement until it told me to go fuck myself.
With their Pitchfork-approved debut EP, Jumping, Dancing, Fighting in the pocket, and a long series of festival appearances under their belts, Hammok is ready to kick off the next chapter. The album was produced by vocalist-guitarist Tobias, then mixed by Simon Folstad Nielsen, and then mastered by Brad Boatwright at Audio Siege.
We love you, Brad.
So I just said Seaman, it might be Simon. I'm not entirely sure if I fucked up your name there, especially calling you Seaman. I am sorry, I do apologise.
I mean, we are Scottish, which means we should be afforded the right to mess up pronunciations of name. That isn't Tam.
Yeah, anything longer than 3 letters, and I'm
Agnes, come here. See.
Hammok. This was a bit of a last minute late addition to the reviews this week. I'd already sent over.
Oh, it was noted. It was noted.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, I wasn't even at
mark.
home. I basically said, I've just flung another album in there while you're away from home stressing with work. I've just flung another one in there. I'm just thinking maybe we could have it ready for Thursday. It's like, aye, Dave, why not? Why not?
Yeah.
All the time in the fucking world.
I hadn't planned to do any more. And then I got a little bit of news piece in, reading a bit about it, and I thought, oh, I've got a wee...
The filter highlighted Brad Boatwright.
Yeah.
You were like, oh, well, I mean...
Brad Boatwright. Whenever he's involved, I'm like, I need to have a listen. They had a single out called Seance.
Yes.
So I was like, oh, I'll have a wee listen to that. And then I played it and I was like, I wonder if is it too late? Is it too late to throw this in the pile? That track kind of intrigued me because, like in the press release, kind of alluded to it. This is like the foundations of like kind of punk rock and hardcore are the kind of main kind of staple of this band. But there was a lot of other stuff going on that don't ordinarily come with with punk or a straightforward kind of hardcore album. That track in particular, Seance, had I actually watched the video for it. It's got a really like cool, like a one take, like one shot kind of video with the band playing, and like they were playing like electronic drum pads and bit of synth bass, and there was bits of glitchy electronics and stuff. I was like, all right, this is pretty cool. It's got that kind of like hardcore punk underneath it, but it was quite a dark kind of track, which I really enjoyed. Quite moody, but it still had a really cool hook to it as well at the same time. And I found myself kind of singing it afterwards. I only listened to it once. I was like, all right, okay, this is cool. And I felt like there was maybe more to kind of dissect from hearing that track, and I figured it might be interesting for us to get into this one and have a little chat about it, Duncan. So kind of as expected, the rest of the album is a kind of wild ride, to be honest.
Yeah, it's not a static album.
No, it is not. It is not. Yeah, they're throwing all sorts of typical Norwegians. They're throwing all sorts of odd combinations and genres and ideas at you.
Norwegians. So, which way is Norway from where I am? Somewhere about here.
And sometimes I'm like, I'm down with that, and sometimes I'm like, whoa, too much. Whoa, just rein it in. I kind of think this is awesome, though, to be honest, because they do mix a lot here. There's a lot going on, but actually they found a way to kind of make it work all together. The opening track, Long Lasting, kind of sets the intensity bar pretty high. Like it comes right out of the gate, and the kind of riffs of it were almost kind of like very kind of blackened hardcore almost. Drums were rapid, and then it kind of kicks into these really like kind of spazzed out hardcore riffs and bits of kind of drum grooves with lots of fills and stuff. And although like you can hear that it's in the same like ballpark as Seance, like tonally it fits, but a completely different type of track, and a different side of the band. Slightly less emphasis on the kind of like the melody or vocal hook on that opening track, but I think that's on purpose. It's only like 1:55.
Yeah, it's not long lasting at all.
No, so it almost feels, yeah, it almost feels like an introduction to the album rather than like a full blown song. And then they kick into Seance, which is the second track on the album, and that's where like they really get their hooks into you on that track. Before moving on to Nothing's Never Better, which kind of gives you a bit of both worlds. You get a bit of the chaos and a bit of the melody. I was getting huge kind of At the Drive-In vibes on that track.
Yeah, it's all over this.
Yeah. You can hear it, especially in the guitar work, and a lot of the kind of shouty, kind of hardcore vocals kind of reminded me of At the Drive-In. It's another killer track. Really like, and the whole album's pretty much like this. It really drives forward, but it feeds you these little like lyrical melodic gems that just kind of get stuck in your head along the way. But what I thought was cool was they don't like reuse the same ideas. The vocal style and the vocal delivery changes quite a lot throughout the album. If you take a track like Wannabe, for example, the vocals are modified enough on that track that it doesn't sound repetitive at all. Again, that track leans quite heavily into the kind of post-hardcore side of things vocally, which I really liked, and had a bit more of a kind of emotional kind of streak to it than a track like Seance, for example. There are also tracks on this album where they just like let the crazy out and push the boundaries. HFD sits pretty much in the kind of middle of the album, and that's where they get really like contorted rhythmically in the guitars and the drums. It's quite jarring to begin with before they start to kind of feed in some of those more kind of straight grooves. But I liked it. I found that like the awareness of Hammok at this stage in their career, like on a debut album, is quite impressive. I think they know smartly like when to kind of to push and pull in the album. You know, they don't overload you with too much for too long. I feel like as songwriters, they've got a good understanding of when to just kind of pull back and let the track kind of simmer for a little bit as well. I thought Brain Rot Desperation was a really good example of that, where they kind of hit you with all this abrasive noise, really kind of wiry guitars for a good 2 minutes before breaking the track down into something very clean and very atmospheric. And I love that they kept, when that kicks in, they keep the drum sound very like dampened in that section, almost like muffled sounding, which was cool. Because when it kicks back in to the kind of heavier part of the song, the drums really kick in and hit you with a lot of punch. Opportunity Erased, I thought, was another really clever mix of that kind of indie infused kind of hardcore, but this time with a little bit of a almost kind of post-punk and at moments there's a really cool kind of breakdown in the middle of the track where the guitars become a little bit more almost kind of gothic and kind of moody. It doesn't last for like a huge amount of time, but it's just enough for it to flip the tone of the track, which was cool. And they are prone to doing that, just dropping in a certain sound for a track and then never really touching on it again in the rest of the album. For me, there was maybe a couple of tracks where they maybe went a little bit too into the weeds on the kind of experimental side of their sound, and I felt like it maybe started to lose direction a little bit. But they are very good at kind of resetting you when it does become a little bit kind of derailed. Adding a track like Post Wannabe at track 9 is a great kind of breather, kind of interlude type moment, which kind of lets you get your bearings before the last two tracks of the album. And I thought the album closed very strongly with Terror Forever Lasting, which does share some similarities with the opening track, Long Lasting, but it's a bit more fleshed out with a really cool like post-hardcore vocal hook as well. Production's great. I really like that kind of like harsh and kind of gritty vibe to it. I think that really accentuates that hardcore side of the band. It makes it a more intense listen for me. It is quite DIY in places, like the press release said, but not in a bad way. There's a kind of roughness to this that works really well for their sound. I think if you overproduce this or make it too polished, then it would lose a lot of that kind of authenticity, I suppose. So I think they nailed that, as well as the actual kind of mix of the album, which is really well measured. I really enjoyed this. I'm glad that we actually decided to check this one out in a bit more depth. There's a lot of kind of traits that I recognise. You'll hear little moments where like remind you of something else. But there's also a lot of personality coming through on this from Hammok as well that sounds kind of unique to them. It's maybe not fully developed yet, but this is their debut, and kind of knowing what they're capable of at this stage, I fully expect these guys to do something even more impressive on the next one. So yeah, what about yourself? What did you think of this one from Hammok?
I think this is fucking great. I unlike you, I don't think they go enough in the weeds.
Oh Jesus!
I think they show a lot of potential to go like almost avant-garde in parts. And I don't know. On a debut, it's probably good that they don't. I think that's going to come out over time. I can't see this kind of calcifying into a more cohesive sound that bands like this tend to. Well, you mentioned at the drive-in earlier on. There's a classic example of a band that come out the gates explosive and mental, and then you look at basically what they did after that, and it's everything except that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happens. I think you either gravitate towards a kind of more artistic pursuit in terms of what you deliver, or you actually go grander in terms of the design overall. I actually think I'm fully not surprised that they're from Norway, because it has this kind of almost Covert Attack meets fucking like Blood Command meets. And there's a lot of American influences in here at the drive-in, notwithstanding. A band that I've mentioned loads this year and towards the end of last year as well, where I'm picking up little bits and bobs of them all over the place. But the Bronx, there's a bit of very early Bronx in here as well. What I love about them is, you were talking about the bits that they do move away, but they've kind of crafted a sound. I think the sound that they've crafted is actually around the vocals. The vocals are the anchor point to almost the whole album.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to find out what he has done with his vocals and what he hasn't. I think at times it feels like there might be a bit of distortion on it.
Yeah.
Which I'm not against. Either that or like the gains fucking crank like a motherfucker. I'm not against that. It fits the fucking sound, even if there are any effects in there. But it's that kind of... It's that breaking point, that fry vocal, which is just at the front of everything he does. And then the introduction of tonal melody and the backing vocals, which are kind of shouty tonal melody, the kind of like almost hardcore gang vocals. I fucking love it, and it opens up every chorus because every chorus that needs a hook as the hookiest hook ever because of that. I think what they do is at times angular, but also very, very, very smart. And actually, the introduction of things like a kind of almost a little bit of kind of Nine Inch Nails industrial on a track like Seance, or a kind of almost the Hives, the Strokes kind of 90s kind of what was it, indie punk, post indie punk, or whatever they fucking called it. On tracks like Wannabe, Billboard #1, are just lush. There's a lot of those bands from that Scandinavian region that do that. Like, I think we used to call it jangly chords because that's what it sounds like. Yeah. But in the context of what they're doing here, with kind of sporadic stop and start syncopated drum rhythms, and that production, which is, I mean, these guys should take a fucking bow here on that production. It is so good. It's so good. And they're saying that they've not fucked with it. I believe that. I think this has all the feel of guys just working shit out.
Yeah.
I love the way the album flows as well. You are given almost on every odd track something that's far more egregiously aggressive. And on the even tracks, something that contains a bit more melody and kind of almost forethought to having a root of something that'll catch in your head. And that formula almost works all the way through the entire album. It's only towards the end where it kind of deviates from that. Like yourself, I was picking up that not only thematics between tracks 4 Wannabe and track 9 Post Wannabe, the idea of those concepts inverting, the opening track and the closing track, the ideas of like musically those being fleshed out, played in a different way, shows to me that these guys are all over this. I mean, their press statement might be aloof, their attitude might be fuck it, we'll throw it all against the wall, but actually the lady doth protest a little bit too much. Under the hood here, there is some incredibly smart writing, and maybe a casual listener might not pick up on that, but I did. It has a flow. This album has a real good flow. Like, I never felt like I fully knew what I was getting next, but that was never an issue. Even at the moments where it goes to its most, you called it in the weeds, I would say they're the most elastic. I always kind of felt like, oh, we're going to see. I can't wait to hear what the next track gives me, and it would kick and I'd be like, cool. Trapdoor might be one of the most pissed off songs I've heard this year. It is just that is an upfront cunt of a track, and like it literally just it's the one that press statement most like vibes me. You know, fuck you fucking fuck. Here's Trapdoor. Yeah, I thought this was fucking great. Very glad that it came, because I'd done, like, because I was working away, most of the listens for everything else I'd done well in advance. So I had a bit of time where I was going to do re-listens, and he gave me something else, and I was listening to it going, is this my favourite? like, did this just sneak in at the end? It's moments like these that you get excited. We talk about this all the time, where bands are just at the start of their journey. You can kind of get on that ground level. Yeah. And it's very, very, very exciting. Like, Norway has a really, really, really cool kind of punk hardcore scene that I don't think enough light is shone on, out with bands like Fair Attack, who are like the biggies. But there's a whole host of bands out there that don't have the owl head. You know what I mean? They're kind of like belt and braces. They've got the aesthetic, they've got the sound, they've got the vibe, and you can hear them. It's all the way through it. Yeah, I think this is kind of fucking awesome. So yeah, I had a great time with that. Like I say, my only gripe was I actually think they could go a bit more experimental. I don't think it would lose me at all. So
nice. Okay, so scores for the new album from Hammok. Yeah, very solid debut album. I love what these guys are doing. I love the fact that they are just willing to throw everything at the wall and, you know, see what happens. Yeah, I think there's maybe bits of it that didn't quite work for me, but it was very minimal, to be honest. There was nothing here I hated, or, you know, nothing I'd want to skip or anything like that. I'm going to go 4 out of 5 on this one. Enjoyed it, immensely enjoyed it. What about yourself? What are you thinking?
I'm a 0.5 higher than you. This is a
Oh.
4.5 for me. I
Nice.
actually don't think they're that far away from a 5-star already.
Nice.
And they're on album number 1. This is an exciting band. Like I'm excited to hear more from this band. And if this is what they can do, just like locking themselves like in a room and just kind of putting the DIY ethic to its maximum on a debut album, imagine what happens when they've got a bit more time to work with maybe a more seasoned producer. Like we could be on to fucking gold in a very, very, very short amount of time. So yeah 4.5 from me.
Nice. So that's Hammok. How long? Look how long lasting everything is moving forward for once.
Well done, Dave.
Out on March 1st on 30 something records. Links below the band, the Bandcamp. Check it out, have a listen, see what you think. Let us know down in the comments below. That is our review. Thank you for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye everyone.